Welcome back. And now to today's panel. Joining me are former Labor leader Mark Latham and Liberal power broker Michael Kroger. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Michael, I'll start with you. This deal that Julia Gillard announced yesterday will send 800 of our boat people to Malaysia. They give us 4,000 back. It probably will stop the boats, won't it?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a totally bizarre policy. I think people are utterly bewildered by this policy. And if there's one thing, Andrew, people weren't thinking yesterday was that, yes, the Malaysian solution. God, by damn it, that's what we need. But I'll tell you what we do need. We need in tomorrow's Age, the Fairfax Press tomorrow, a full-page advertisement signed by Gillard and Bowen and Swan and Kevin Rudd, probably you, Beazley, with a big heading saying, apology to John Howard and Philip Ruddock. We, the undersigned, were wrong. We apologise. The inhumane policies we accused you of, which were not inhumane, we were completely wrong. That's got to be in the Age and the Sydney Morning Herald tomorrow. Because,
Mark, it is exactly the same policy, isn't it, in a sense? Instead of sending people to Nauru, all right, they send them to Malaysia. The only difference being is, under Nauru, we didn't get 4,000 refugees back.
Well, Michael's right. For 10 years, Labor policy was baloney, and the government's fessing up to that now. But they're also misreading public opinion. Public opinion in the outer suburbs, where they do the focus groups and where these policies come from, is about reducing the number of refugees into Australia. Not bringing 4,000 from Malaysia and sending 800 over there, which increases the number of refugees.
Because that's the point that hasn't come out. It's 4,000 on top.
It increases the number of refugees into Australia. And out in suburban Vaderland, the people want to see fewer refugees coming to this country. And the government, it's sort of comedy capers in that the government's responding to that view, picked up through opinion polling and focus group research. But it's doing it in a very ham-fisted way. They're thrashing around trying to find these different policy initiatives, but missing the bottom line, and that is that Australians want fewer refugees coming into the country.
So it's not just about boat people, it's about fewer.
It's about the number and the effectiveness of policies, and it's almost like they're into gimmickry and spin with these policies. That what's the latest madcap idea we can think of to throw into the refugee pot, and none of it's working for them at all.
No, it isn't, and because, Michael, the whole thing about, it's not just about boat people coming in uninvited, it's also about what's happening once they're here. I was really struck by the Immigration Department report, snuck out during the royal wedding kerfuffle, showed that 85% of refugees in Australia over the first 5 years on benefits.
Look, the government has completely lost control of refugee and immigration policy. You look at the last 6 years of the Howard government. You know how many people arrived, unauthorised boat arrivals, every year for the last 6 years of the Howard government? 50 a year. 50. In 2010, there were 6,889 illegal boat arrivals. What does that tell you? This government has completely lost control of this process, completely lost control. Now they've had to revert. There's no difference. This is John Howard's policy in a different way, without the, roulette wheel of life over there in Malaysia.
No, but there's one more domino to fall, and that's the reintroduction of the temporary protection visas.
Spot on.
Because they're thrashing around, trying all the different things. They're reintroducing Manus Island and so forth. There's only one big thing left to do, and it will come sometime before the next election, and that's for Labor to recognise that reintroducing the temporary protection visas stops the flow.
One other thing that didn't get much play this week because of it's been such a big news week, Osama bin Laden, the news poll. More bad news for Julia Gillard. 47% of the two-party preferred vote for Labor, 53% to the coalition. That's a hiding. Do you think it's terminal for her?
Probably. The great underlying problem with the Gillard Prime Ministership is a lack of respect. And for reasons that require tremendous elaboration, and we haven't got time for this morning, she seems to be one of the only Prime Ministers I can think of that doesn't associate herself with respect among the Australian people. You talk to the public about Gillard, and there's a lot of commentary there, but no respect whatsoever.
I think she's shrunk in the role.
There's a national habit of kicking politicians, fair enough, but there's always some residual respect, whether it was Kevin Rudd or John Howard in particular, Paul Keating, Bob Hawke. There's always respect associated with the office itself, and Gillard seems to have squandered that for reasons to do with how she got the job, the policy flip-flopping, some of her own personal circumstances.
I think she's lost confidence. I think she's lost confidence too. She's shrunk in the job, hasn't she?
I think that's true.
Look, I think the thing is this. If for 30 years you've been a member of the Socialist left faction because you've believed in certain things, higher taxes, anti-Americanism, changing the flag, a bit of a republic, whatever, all of these issues, and for 30 years you've believed in that, and then you become Prime Minister, Andrew, And you completely change your view. Now she talks about the primacy of God in understanding Western civilisation. She doesn't want to change the flag. She goes to the Congress.
People don't know what she believes in.
What does she believe in?
And look,
I mean,
everything she seems to do at the moment, it seems to turn to dust in her hands. I don't like this announcement, the Malaysian deal. I think will be laughed at. This week, for example, she got the business leaders in to try to talk, the charm offensive it's being called, try and talk them into backing her carbon dioxide tax. And we had actually, the footage was terrible. It looked like a meeting the mafiosi, and all of them got heckled outside the front door by some carbon dioxide tax protester. Bad look, wasn't it?
Well, let me just say this about the news poll that you raised. There seems to be a direct correlation between Labor's sagging numbers and the level of Gillard activity with the charm offensive, international trips, a whole confusing range of policy initiatives, none of which are cutting through and doing the job. So I think she's worried that these numbers are causing discontent within the caucus, and she's got to get out and do a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
but her strategy
it's
people would be better. Exactly, they'd be better off sitting down and saying, look, let's not do a million things that just confuse the public further. Let's just build on one theme. How do we regain respect for the prime ministerial office held by Julia Gillard?
And get the optics right. You know,
and probably doing fewer things, but doing them well, off principle, off conviction, off purpose, would be a far better strategy than the scattergun they've got out there at the moment.
I can't help but agree with you. Yeah, but Michael, I've thought for a while that she's been finished, and the only thing that I can see that's propping her up at the moment is the lack of alternatives in the Labor Party, alternative leaders. It's amazing. Bill Shorten has shrunk in the job too. I mean, I don't see him out there. Who, if it's not Gillard, who would it be?
It's funny you should say that. Someone said to me yesterday, if I was advising the Labor Party, what would I tell them to do right now, federally? I mean, Mark would have a better idea than me, but what would I advise them to do? Now, this is what we know. The people that got rid of Kevin Rudd are not going to be involved in another coup, because not only didn't they get thanks for saving the election, which they did, because Rudd would have been slaughtered, they've been criticised for getting rid of Rudd, which was lunacy. So they're going to say, well, we've done our bit. There's no one else in the Labor caucus of stature who's going to bring Gillard down. The only thing that could happen to Gillard, I think, in the real world, and this is not going to happen, but the only thing which can save Labor is Gillard resigning. And she's not going to do that, and they're not going to challenge her. So Labor are now going to go to the election with Gillard. The best thing that could happen for Labor, in an ideal world, is Gillard saying, I've been a public policy disaster.
No, you're asking. She's not just going to.
No, it's not going to happen.
She's not going to quit.
It's not going to happen. But they're going to lose. You look at the Canadian. You look at the Canadian election. They campaigned on an ETS over there, effectively the Labor equivalent, and got slaughtered.
Absolutely.
Got slaughtered, and that's what's going to happen.
But you're asking her to say, look, I've been a dud, I'm moving on.
She's not going to do it.
Mark, she's not going to do that. Who would you see as the natural leader? Because if one doesn't come up, it's Kevin Rudd, and no one wants him.
He does.
And the public does.
And Kevin Ziegler is always worth 50 votes in the caucus.
If not Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, who?
Well, it won't be Rudd. And I don't think it'll be anyone for some little time for this reason, that Gillard is tied to the independents. The independents signed the agreement in the hung parliament with Gillard, and they've said publicly that if Labor changes leader, obviously that agreement falls over, it could precipitate a change in government, moving to Tony Abbott. So Labor won't do that. If they make a leadership change, it'll be late in the scene, close to the time of the next scheduled election, where the agreement with the independents doesn't matter. So it'll be a last-minute change, and
look, it will.
I'm standing by my tip that Chris Bowen is
Chris Bowen, all right, but he's in all sorts of trouble. Mark Latham, thanks for joining us. Michael Kroger, good on you. Thanks for coming.
Pleasure. And
listen, coming up after the break, I'm going to horrify you, Michael. Paul Keating, why he's my hero. Now, you yourself are a boat person from Afghanistan, aren't you? Can you just describe the process by which you came from Afghanistan to Australia?
Andrew, I was 18 years old. The trip was arranged by my parents. We went through Pakistan, through Indonesia, and from Indonesia we got on board on a fishy boat to come to Australia.
Now, I understand your family's still in Pakistan. Why didn't you stay in Pakistan? Why didn't you stay in Indonesia?
First thing first, these two countries that you are mentioning, they're not they haven't signed the Refugee Convention of United Nations.
But you could have stayed in Indonesia, couldn't you?
Andrew, don't we have refugees from Indonesia fleeing Indonesia itself
Not
as
many,
refugees?
Not many. Australians are a little worried about a couple of things. One is people dying at sea. You want Tony Abbott to stop putting in the deterrents to stop people from coming by boat.
Andrew, I'm not in any way encouraging taking people the same desperate attempt that I made. The thing is that locking people up, having a cruel and expensive approach by sending them after they get to our shores, Andrew, and after paying the same people smuggling racket, after risking their lives to come to Australia. Once they come to Australian shores, then we will get them to Nauru. I don't think it's going to stop people taking that
It worked before, Riz. It worked before and it saved lives. Can I ask you one other question? The other thing that worries Australians is there's just been a Department of Immigration survey into how Afghan refugees, for example, like yourself, are doing in Australia. But it said, after 5 years still, something like 94% are on Centrelink benefits, only 9% of adults actually are employed.
Andrew, if that's true what you are saying, that should worry us, but we don't have to victimize a particular community, a particular people, Andrew. What are the unemployment ratio in other communities? And as far as I know, people who came with me, people who I know from past 11 years, Andrew, they are in businesses, they run small businesses, they are in, they own their own houses now, they have a very good living.
You're a marvellous example of someone who is a success story, and I thank you for taking the argument to us here. Thanks for joining us. And now to Spin of the Week. Here from Monday is President Obama's counter-terrorism advisor, John Brennan, describing how the US shot al-Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden.
He was engaged in a firefight. Here is bin Laden, who has been calling for these attacks, living in this $1 million plus compound, living in an area that is far removed from the front, hiding behind women who were put in front of him as a shield.
Great spin. US troops brave gunfire to kill an armed terrorist hiding behind a woman's skirts. Except it's all false. 4 of the 5 people killed in that operation were unarmed, including bin Laden, who hid behind no one. Now, this White House spin is so unspun that it's fed mad conspiracy theories such as, did it even shoot bin Laden? Luckily, al-Qaeda has now apparently said it believes its boss is dead, even though millions now don't, thanks to this Spin of the Week. Here's a story this week that got too little attention. Canada on Monday went to the polls. Of the 5 big parties battling it out, 4 promised an emissions trading scheme of the kind the Gillard government wants. Just 1 didn't. The Conservative Party, which, you guessed it, won this election. Let Labor take note. Former Prime Minister Paul Keating gets our first Free Speech Award for resigning from a panel reviewing the design of an East Darling Harbour project. Keating said he'd rather quit than agree to a state government ban on saying this about Lord Mayor Clover Moore's supporters.
She's for sandal-wearing, muesli-chewing, bike-riding pedestrians.
Isn't free speech fun? And that's the show. Please join in the debate by sending me an email at theboltreport@network10.com.au, and there's also my blog, heraldsun.com.au/Andrew Bolt. Meet the Press is next with Paul Bongiorno. Today he'll be speaking to Greens leader Bob Brown. But for now, I'm Andrew Bolt. I look forward to your company next week, and happy Mother's Day. Same time next week. Goodbye.